Picture this. There's a guy sitting alone on a park bench. He's not scrolling through his phone. He's not trying to look interesting. He's not watching anyone. He's just sitting there, still, calm, completely present. Meanwhile, the world around him is in fast forward. People rushing past, late to meetings, hunting for promotions, swiping right for love, filming their 37th TikTok of the day. Loud laughter, rapid conversations, constant motion. Everyone's trying to be something, get something, prove something, but not him. He's not chasing money. He's not searching for love. He's not begging to be seen. And yet, ironically, he stands out more than anyone else. He radiates something rare, something unsettling, a kind of quiet completeness. He gives off a silent message. I don't need anything from you. And that right there makes him the most powerful person in that park. Not because he's trying to dominate, not because he's better than anyone, but because he's free. Free from the invisible chains that everyone else is unknowingly dragging around. While the world around him scrambles for attention, comfort, or distraction, this man has found something more valuable: inner fullness. And that changes everything. Because in a culture built on lack, someone who needs nothing becomes a threat, a mirror. And in that mirror, the world is forced to look at itself. Its addiction to applause, to validation, to more. So here's the question I want you to carry with you as we dive deeper. Why does a man who feels whole, who needs nothing? And what one saying says, let's get brutally honest. This world isn't just nudging you to want more. It depends on you wanting more. It needs you to crave, to chase, to consume. That's how it runs. The moment you stop needing, you stop buying. And when you stop buying, the machine starts to break down. That's why every screen is designed to whisper, you're not enough. That's why every ad screams, you're falling behind. You're not successful enough. So buy the course. You're not attractive enough. So buy the cream, the clothes, the surgery. You're not connected enough. So spend 6 hours checking who liked your post, who replied, who left you unread. But here's the darker truth. It's not just marketing. It's manipulation. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Why? Because when you really look inward, when you stop performing and start listening, you begin to realize that so much of what you thought was you was never actually yours. Your beliefs? Borrowed. Your desires? Manufactured. Your identity? Constructed for approval. And society does not want you to discover this. Because the moment you face your inner world, you begin to wake up to just how controlled your outer world actually is. And Jung wasn't the only one who saw this. Centuries before him, he wasn't trying to free people, he was trying to control them. As a political strategist, advising rulers and princes, his message was clear. Never let the people feel whole. Keep them distracted, keep them needing, keep them looking upward, begging the crown to save them. Why? Because the moment a citizen feels content, when he stops fearing lack, when he stops needing applause, he becomes uncontrollable. Think about that. If you need nothing, no one can bribe you. No promise can seduce you. No threat can break you. You become ungovernable. And to a system built on dependency, that's the greatest act of rebellion. So the next time you feel that familiar itch, the one that says, I should be doing more, I need to be better, I need to prove something, just pause. Ask yourself, is this a real desire or a dependency I've been trained to chase? Because the man who questions his own cravings is already halfway to freedom, and the man who no longer needs, he's already there. So what happens when someone starts to unlearn everything society told them to chase? What happens when a man stops measuring his worth by the size of his paycheck, the number of followers, or how well he plays the social game? Carl Jung had a word for this transformation: individuation. It's the process of becoming who you really are, not who you were told to be. It's not about adding more layers. It's about removing everything false. At the heart of individuation are two forces every person must confront: the persona and the shadow. Let's break that down. The persona is the mask you wear. It's the version of you that society accepts. It smiles when you're dying inside. It agrees when you disagree. It plays the game to avoid rejection. Jung said, "The persona is a kind of coat we wear when dealing with the world, but it is not the true self." Most people confuse their mask with their identity, and in doing so, they become prisoners of it. But the man on the path of individuation, he rips the mask off. It's act of though it never know he do, and must receive themself. And that's when he meets the shadow, the part of himself he's been taught to hide. His rage, his lust, his fear, his wounds, his ambition. Most people run from this, but not the dangerous man. He integrates it. He doesn't let the shadow control him, but he also doesn't deny it. He shines a light on it, and by doing so, he becomes whole. He no longer chases applause. He's no longer terrified of rejection. He's not trying to be good by someone else's definition. He's not chasing an identity, evingerated. He's embodying his truth. And that is what makes him dangerous. Because now he's not waiting for society to validate him. He already knows who he is. The one who chased approval, who feared judgment, who measured worth by what others thought. That version of you won't survive the journey. And that's exactly the point. Because to become the man who needs nothing, and what replaces him? A man rooted in truth. A man no longer swayed by the tides of public opinion or the empty noise of social validation. He walks slower, speaks less, thinks deeper. There's a gravity to him, not because he's trying to impress, but because he no longer needs to. This doesn't mean he stops caring. Quite the opposite. He cares more, but from a place of overflow, not from emptiness. He gives, not to get. He helps, not to be seen as good. He shows up, not to perform, but because he knows who he is, and that's enough. There's a certain magnetism that comes from this kind of presence. It's not loud, it doesn't advertise itself, but people feel it. They don't know why they're drawn to him. Maybe it's because in a world of copies he feels original. Maybe it's because in a culture of clout he radiates clarity. But here's the irony. The moment you stop trying to be desirable is the moment you become undeniable. People chase those who seem fulfilled without them. They want to be close to that energy. They want to learn how to be that free. And yet, this man doesn't hoard his peace. He doesn't build walls. He builds boundaries. And there's a difference. Walls keep people out because of fear. Boundaries allow connection, but not at the cost of self. He loves deeply, but not desperately. He connects, but not compulsively. He is loyal, but not owned. Generous, but not drained. He listens, but he's not swayed by every voice. And this confuses people, because they're used to others bending, adjusting, morphing to fit the crowd. But he doesn't. He bends for truth, not trend. And when conflict arises, he doesn't fold. He doesn't explode either. He doesn't need to dominate or destroy. He just holds his ground, not out of ego, but out of alignment. That's the real power of the man who needs nothing. He's not aggressive, he's anchored. And when the storms of life come, and they will, he doesn't panic. He doesn't reach for distractions or blame the world or look for someone to save him. He simply breathes, observes, responds from clarity. Most people are trained to react, to grab their phone when they're anxious, to scroll when they're lonely, to buy when they feel insecure. But he doesn't reach for noise to cover his silence. He trusts it. He knows that silence isn't empty. It's full of information. It's where clarity lives. That's why he doesn't fear it. He uses it. And in that silence, he does something most people avoid. He listens to his inner voice. Not the voice of fear, not the echo of society, but the quiet, consistent knowing that's been buried under years of programming. And when that voice speaks, he listens, even if it tells him to walk away from comfort, even if it cost him approval, even if it means standing alone. Because that voice, that inner compass, has proven to be the only thing that never lies to him. That's where his integrity comes from. Not a list of rules, but an unshakable alignment between his actions and his inner truth. And when he speaks, people notice. Not because he's loud, but because he doesn't waste words. He doesn't perform for attention. He speaks to cut through the noise, to say what needs to be said, not what people want to hear. And when he's silent, that silence speaks too. It says, I don't need to fill this space to feel valuable. I don't need to convince you to validate me. I am complete without your applause. But here's where it gets really dangerous, not for him, but for the systems built around dependency. When people start seeing someone like this, they start to question themselves. They wonder, why do I need so much? Why do I hustle so hard for approval? What would happen if I stopped pretending? And those questions, those are the cracks in the wall, the first signs that the illusion is starting to break. Because the truth is, the modern world runs on neediness. Entire industries are built around convincing you that something's missing, that you're not enough, that happiness is always one more step away. And if you ever actually feel full, if you ever truly believe that who you are, as you are, is enough, then you stop playing their game. You stop buying the next big thing. You stop performing for applause. You stop chasing ghosts. And that's a threat, a big one, because you become less predictable, less programmable, less profitable. You start making decisions based on truth, not fear. You choose relationships based on alignment, not loneliness. You choose work that feels meaningful, not just impressive. And when you do that, something wild happens. People around you either rise to meet you or fall away. You stop carrying the weight of false expectations. You stop people-pleasing. You stop trading your truth for temporary comfort. And you finally see how much of your life was built on borrowed dreams. You don't hate the world for it. You just decide to wake up. And once you do, you can't go back to sleep. This is where the real journey begins, because waking up isn't a one-time event, it's a daily decision. To choose presence over performance, wholeness over hunger, truth over trend. You still move through the world, you still live in society, but you're no longer of it. You're no longer captured by its illusions. You play the game, but only when you choose to. You no longer play just to win. You play because it's your move, and when it's not, you wait. Not in frustration, but in peace. Because the man who needs nothing is never in a rush. He knows that what's real can't be forced, that what's meant for him will find him, and what's not can never be held, no matter how tight he grasps. He walks through the world lighter, not because life is easy, but because he's no longer carrying the weight of false self. He stopped trying to impress ghosts, stopped chasing the love he was never meant to keep, stopped proving his worth to people who were never qualified to judge it. Because here's the secret. The moment you realize you need nothing, you finally gain the power to choose everything. Not from lack, not from fear, but from alignment. Lorba, you choose who to love, not because they complete you, but because they mirror your wholeness. You choose your work not because it makes you look good, but because it feels true. You choose your path not because it's popular, but because it's yours. This man isn't cold. He's not detached or cynical. In fact, he feels more than most. But he no longer lets emotions control him. He observes them, honors them, and then moves from clarity, not chaos. People mistake this for stoicism, but it's not suppression, it's sovereignty. He doesn't suppress the storm, he stands in it, without letting it throw him off course, because his direction doesn't come from moods or opinions or outcomes. It comes from something deeper, from the part of him that cannot be seduced by comfort or shaken by pain. That's why his presence unsettles some people. He's not easily manipulated. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't play roles he's outgrown. Instead, he leads with stillness. He moves from intention, not impulse. And in doing so, he breaks the spell most people are under, the trance of needing to be liked, needed, chosen. Because he knows now, needing to be chosen is the surest way to forget your own power. And so he chooses himself, not in arrogance, but in responsibility. He refuses to abandon himself to be accepted by others. He knows that every time he did that in the past, he ended up lost, resentful, hollow. So now he stays with himself, especially when it's hard, especially when he's misunderstood, especially when walking away means walking alone. Because he's no longer afraid of solitude. He understands now, solitude is the forge of strength. It's where illusions dissolve, where clarity sharpens, where the man you were pretending to be burns away, and the man you truly are emerges from the fire. And once you've met that man, the one who doesn't flinch at silence, doesn't chase approval, doesn't barter with his soul, you can't unsee him. You can't go back to being who you were, the man who apologized for existing, who diluted his truth, who bent himself to fit into boxes too small for his spirit. You won't fit back into that mold, and you shouldn't, because the world doesn't need more obedient men, it needs more awake ones. Men who have faced their shadows and stopped pretending. Men who don't fear rejection because they no longer reject themselves. Men who can be soft without being weak, who can be firm without being cruel, who can stand alone without turning bitter. And that kind of man, the one who needs nothing, becomes the most powerful, not because he seeks followers, but because he inspires others to lead themselves. He doesn't build dependence, he awakens agency. He doesn't hoard wisdom, he shares freely. He doesn't dominate, he liberates. And yet, he's not interested in being worshipped. He knows how dangerous that is for himself and others. So he keeps his ego in check. He lets truth correct him. He lets failure humble him. He lets love refine him. Because needing nothing doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means receiving it all, but not being owned by any of it. It's not detachment for the sake of detachment. It's discernment. It's learning how to hold the beauty of life with open hands, to love deeply and still let go, to give fully and never expect repayment, to risk vulnerability and survive the heartbreak, because he knows nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal is worth clinging to. This man is no longer addicted to control. He flows with what is, instead of fighting what he wishes it were. He doesn't waste energy fixing what's broken when he knows it was never aligned to begin with. He doesn't beg for closure. He creates his own peace. He doesn't force connection. He lets resonance guide him. And when life tests him, which it will, he doesn't panic. He leans in. He listens. He learns. Because he understands that pressure isn't punishment, it's purification. And through that process, he becomes more of who he really is, more clear, more kind, more courageous. Not perfect, but present. Not flawless, but faithful to what matters. And that is enough. Because when you are no longer owned by your cravings, your fears, your wounds, you become dangerous in the best possible way. You can't be bought. You can't be blackmailed by your past. You can't be distracted by shiny lies. You walk through the world with a quiet rebellion. Not loud, not aggressive, just grounded, centered, free. And in a world that profits off your insecurity, there is no greater act of resistance than becoming the man who needs nothing. So what does life look like for the man who needs nothing? It's quieter, yes, but not empty, meaningful. It's simpler, but not boring, intentional. He doesn't chase highs anymore, he cultivates depth. He's no longer pulled by urgency because he lives in alignment with his values. His life is full, not with noise, but with clarity. He wakes up with purpose, not pressure. He moves through the day without apology, not because he's arrogant, but because he's no longer at war with himself. He doesn't need constant validation because he's built something far more stable, self-trust. That doesn't mean he's invulnerable. He still feels doubt, fear, loneliness. He's still human. But now, he doesn't run from these feelings. He lets them teach him. He lets them move through him without defining him. Because now he understands, pain is a passage, not a prison.